Paranormal Dimensions is a regular feature on Mondays on the Paranormal UK radio network.
Hello, this is Malcolm Robinson and you're listening to the Paranormal UK radio network, the UK's biggest paranormal network, and this is Paranormal Dimensions with David Young.
Hello and welcome to the second episode in our show. It's Paranormal Dimensions here and I'm David Young. We've got a fantastic guest for you today, another one. We had a great show for the last month, Sasha. It's been well received, as I understand. Now, my guest today is Malcolm Robinson. He's one of the foremost UFO and paranormal researchers in the UK. He's written 6 books, I believe, and he's got a 7th coming out shortly. Malcolm's lectured extensively on UFOs and paranormal subjects all over the UK, Ireland, France, Holland, and in Laughlin, Nevada in 2009, I believe it was. Malcolm has appeared regularly on TV both in UK and across the world and has regularly assisted in newspapers and radio stations. He is one of only a handful of people in the world who have actually gone down into Loch Ness into the murky depths to try to find the Loch Ness monster. So we may well touch on that today as well. This is a fact. I think you're going to find Malcolm quite a fascinating guest, and I'm sure that you'll want to look further into his research and his books. Anyway, I'm going to welcome now Malcolm Robinson. Hello, Malcolm. Are you there?
Hello, David. Pleasure to speak to you again, sir.
And you, my friend. How are you? Is it cold down there? We've had a little bit of snow up here, and it's been freezing cold. But
well, it's not too bad here in Hastings. It's quite a sunny day actually, but it's been wet and wild last night. We had a little bit of snow, but that didn't last. So yeah, I mean, we're on the English Channel, so we don't get a great deal of snow down here.
I suppose we better explain. I'm in Suffolk. And although Malcolm's Scottish, he actually lives down in Hastings, so he couldn't get much further away from Scotland, could you, Malcolm?
Unless I went to the moon, but there
Well, in the UK, that is, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But he's very pro-Scottish, and you're actually pro-separating from England, aren't you?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, obviously, we won't go into that, but I do believe that Scotland should have its own government. Yeah.
But we'd have to deport you.
I'll come back, don't worry.
No, anyway, Malcolm, welcome to the show and thank you for accepting my invite, and I'm sure it's going to be an interesting show. I don't quite know where to start with you, really, because you're into sort of everything, aren't you? Paranormal, UFOs and the Loch Ness monsters. I think probably we ought to start with your first book, which is a paranormal book, wasn't it? The volume 1, or was that the UFO?
Yeah, it was the first book was UFO Case Files of Scotland, right. Volume 1. That came out in 2009, and that effectively contained the best, if you like, the best UFO cases coming from Scotland. The A70, the Livingston case, the Fife case, and the UFO Case Files 2 obviously catered for the other many UFO sightings across Scotland. And it's one of these things, David, as a researcher, I feel that I have to be putting the information into books, because if I don't do that, all these files will just lie gathering dust in my home. They've got to get out there to the people.
Oh,
yes, people have the right to see that, and it's very beneficial.
Yeah, I know you've been quite well received on many TV and radio shows and the internet and everything. You do lots of talks as well.
Yeah, I mean, I love talking, as anybody will know, because at the end of the day, it's just a case of, again, not only getting information through the books, but also going on a platform and just discussing it with PowerPoint slides. And I am not an expert, absolutely not an expert. I'm just one of these guys who have this fascination, have this absolute fascination for the subject. And I want answers as much as the next guy. And I just hope that by continuing my research, maybe someday soon we will get a satisfactory explanation to account for what eludes us at the moment.
Yeah. Oh, I know you've had a few. You've had a couple of UFO incidents yourself, haven't you? Was it that seaside town when you were? Was it when you were working at a holiday camp or something?
Oh yes. Now that's strange that you bring out this one. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I've had a number of UFO experiences myself, and I'm happy to tell your good self and your listeners about them. But as you mentioned, this one, it was when I was about 15. I was at a Butlins holiday camp. I believe it was Skegness, and I was living in Scotland obviously at the time, and it was a family holiday, and I met this English girl, and we were in this romantic interlude, shall we say, David, at the back of one of the, you know, more nod, and we're at the back of this chalet, and we're looking out to the sea, and it was a lovely night, and then suddenly I had my back was towards this chalet, and I was looking out into the night sky, and then I couldn't believe it. What it was like builder's scaffolding. That's all it was. Instead of vertically going up a building, it was horizontally on its side like pipes and tubes, and it was slowly moving across the night sky. No depth to it, David. I mean, there was no structure other than these pipe-like appendages, so to speak. And I kind of threw this poor girl away, and I went, what the bloody hell is that, you know? And I'll never forget it. And as we know, you know, UFOs come in all shapes and sizes. Now, that had no noise, it had no colour, it had no lights, it was moving silently, it was moving slowly. And to this day, I can't even think of a possible answer to account for that one. But that was bizarre. That was kind of bizarre, yeah. You know.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. I think we ought to. I know your first love is really the paranormal rather than the UFOs, isn't it? I know we've both got the same passion of UFOs and everything as well, but I believe your first passion is paranormal, really, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and just, I mean, I say this in my talks as well, that I set out as a wee boy to learn more about these subjects. I was fascinated by ghosts and poltergeists and UFOs and lake monsters. And initially, as I've said before, I really didn't give them any substance. I felt there were no validity to any of these claims. What a load of rubbish. There's no such things as this. But you know, and I know, Dave, as you go through life, as you go through investigation, you soon find out that there's no smoke without fire.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we ought to mention we had a little joint experience, didn't we, in Nottingham a couple of years ago?
We did indeed.
I'll let you tell the story. It's actually in your third book. I know. I'm jumping about a bit here. But I thought while we're on we ought to mention that we had a little joint experience which we can't explain.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a couple of years ago. I was speaking to Paraforce, and they kindly invited me to lecture there with other people as well. And I was at the Nottingham Halls of Justice, and it sits, well, below that is these old dungeons and jail cells, and out the back there's this hangman's noose and all that, where they used to, you know, hang people back in the day, and it's part of a museum as well, if you like.
Yeah, very interesting place, I must say.
Oh, it was brilliant, wasn't it?
Absolutely,
so. Yeah. As you can remember, Dave, you and I, we were down the bowels of this big venue, down in the bowels of this Nottingham Halls of Justice.
Yeah.
And as you recall, it was semi-dark. There were flagstones under our feet, square flagstones. And then suddenly I heard, and you heard as well, of course, suddenly we heard this sound, it was like a bullwhip, if you like, a cracking of a bull. Yeah. Aye, it was crazy. And I turned round with a torch, because you and I had torches to illuminate the darkness.
Yeah, we were going up the steps. It was behind us, wasn't it? It was like, yeah.
Right. And I'd got the torch round, and as you remember, the torch focused on the stone, the solitary stone that was there, and I picked up, and it was quite hot. It was really quite hot, and I passed it to you. And obviously, we had been told that in that area, there's known as apports, these stones that fall from the thin air. And so whether that was an apport, it was certainly bizarre. It certainly was warm to touch. Who knows? But that was crazy. That was a crazy incident.
Funny thing is, I didn't actually know that was an occult area.
Yeah.
I only heard that later, that it's been well known for stones appearing. In actual fact, I think a couple of other people that were way back behind us down the bottom, they heard that crack as well and wondered what it was, didn't they?
They did indeed, and I've still got that stone, and I'll be taking it on my talks as well. And I will mention this in my talks throughout the year, and it's always nice just to show people the stone. And I'm actually going to give it to someone to do psychometry on it. Won't tell them all about it. See what they get, In
actual fact, I think you've got a picture of it in the book. I mean, what I'll probably do, I'll put it on the website so people can see the picture of it. Along with some more information about yourself and the books and everything. And that's all right with you, isn't it?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like I say, it's all about getting that information out. And I mean, I'm still sceptical. I mean, any haunted house I go into,
I mean, you've got to look at what else it could be before you jump to the conclusions that it was something paranormal. You've got to do that. I think the funny thing was that with that though, if being the stone that it was, and on those stone steps, you'd have thought a stone like that would have hit, and you'd hear it bouncing or something, wouldn't you? But it seemed to be just like one solid crack, as I remember.
That's right, and it was a smooth stone as well. There were no jagged edges to it. It was completely smooth, and
so you'd have expected it to bounce or something, wouldn't you?
Exactly, yeah. And it was a great night that night. As you and I took part in these psychic teams, going about, and it was interesting. And I very much hope that we can get up there another day and do some more research.
Yeah, it was a fascinating place. It was a good conference, actually. Shame it wasn't quite as well attended as I would have expected it to be, but it was a good one, I must say.
Yeah, it was. And I mean, like I said before, growing up, when I took this interest in the paranormal, I did find that there were certain things that I couldn't understand. And of course, slowly but surely, as the years progressed, I came off that proverbial sceptical fence. And but you're right when you say my heart truly lies in the paranormal, David. I love being immersed in a haunted house and the expectation. And 9 times out of 10, nothing happens.
No, that's right. It's actually pretty boring, isn't it, on some of these ghost hunts and things you do. And then all of a sudden something will grab your interest when you're sort of really thinking, I'm going to go home in a minute.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's that one thing, that's the spark that lights the fire, not the petrol in the car, if you like, that makes it run. And
the funny thing is saying that time in Nottingham, I thought it was a bit slow in that I didn't think much was going on there, to be honest. And suddenly there's that crack of that stone, and that really sort of piqued my interest. It's well, I don't know if you had the same feeling yourself, but that kind of thought, something's happened.
Yeah, I mean, and it makes it all worthwhile, I mean, I was aware that this area had, it was well known for apports and mostly stones being thrown at people and hitting people on the shoulder, etc. Admittedly, I had maybe forgot about it at that time, but it wasn't until we heard the stone, saw the stone, that I realised, oh God, yes, that's right, Christ, these things happen in this area. Yeah. And it was great to be part of it. Fantastic.
Yeah, it was amazing, because you showed it to Bill Rook as well, didn't you? And he was quite impressed with it.
The lovely Bill Rook, my dear friend. Yes,
I might have to try and get him on the show as well one day, because I'm sure he'll have plenty to tell us about his apparitions and things.
Yeah, it'll be a 10-hour show, David.
Oh, I know, yeah, that's what I've got to be careful of. I mean, I think I'm up against it with you, actually, because I know you've got tons of stories to tell, so I'll have to let you tell a few.
Yeah. I mean, growing up, as I say, I immersed myself in this wonderful subject, and I've mentioned some of these stories before. But for your own listeners, I remember one time we were working on this haunted house in Kirkintilloch, which is a town near Glasgow, and it was an ex-police officer's house. And when we went in the property, every wall had a photostat copy of the Lord's Prayer, and every door had a crucifix hanging around about it. And we went up to one of the bedrooms, where one of the children's bedrooms, And we always work in semi-darkness with our psychic medium. And as I walked in through this kid's bedroom, I felt like fingers ruffling my hair at the top of my head. And I screamed to Billy Devlin, who was one of our researchers at SPI, Billy, put on the light. Why? Just put on the light. And I thought, David, that maybe it was a child's mobile, like an aircraft, an Airfix model that had brushed my hair. But as soon as we put the light on, I looked up, and it was clear ceiling, just a flat ceiling. But this clearly was fingers, 4 or 5 fingers brushing my hair.
You do hear that a lot, don't you, in some of these hauntings? About it's like they talk it like a spider's web, don't they, going across your hair or something like that?
Absolutely. And then when I worked for United Glass in Alloa, everybody kind of more or less accepted that I was a kind of a strange guy into UFOs. But they took it fine. In fact, they would come up with some newspaper cuttings. Hey, Malcolm, have you seen this? Apart from one elderly guy who says, what a load of rubbish, Malcolm. See, you're off your head.
You'll always get those.
And he said to me that, look, I'll tell you what, Malcolm, when I pass away, and God forbid it's not for many, many years, if there is such a thing as a life after death, Christ, I'll come back and you'll bloody well know about it. I says, okay, Bobby, fair enough, son. So many years went by, David, a number of years went by, and I was getting up for a day shift at 6 o'clock in the morning. Well, I started at 6. I
know that feeling, yeah.
4:45. Oh, yes, we've all been there. So 4:45, I get up, the house is silent, my wife's sleeping up the stair. Darkness, goes down to the kitchen, and they started to put the kettle on, and then suddenly I felt something strongly behind me, and I slowly turned round and I saw nothing was there, and I went, by God, what the hell was that? Because it really went icy cold, David. So anyway, I went to my work, I went into the men's mess room, and all my colleagues, their heads were down. I says, hey, what's the matter with you? Cheer up, boys. Cheer up. Have you not heard?
Yeah.
Have you not heard, Malcolm? Bobby Smith died last night.
Oh, my God, yeah.
Now, the thing is, I never saw him. That's the man who said, if there is such a thing as life after death, I'll come back. Now, I never saw him, but by golly, did I not feel something and presence, And these are all kind of stories that help me propel myself into this wonderful domain of the paranormal. My father, even my own father, he says, son, I can see you're getting into all this spooky stuff, but here, let me tell you this. He says, your granny, my mother, as you know, she passed away several years ago, but see, a couple of nights, Malcolm, after she had passed away, I was lying in my bed, the lights were out, I wasn't sleeping, and then suddenly I heard, Robert, look at me. And he says, son, he's speaking to me, at this time, he says, Malcolm, I was terrified. I knew it was my mother, your granny. I knew it was my mother. She died 2 days before.
Wow. Yeah.
And she's in the room. And so I looked and I saw this beautiful light, this phosphorescent light at the corner of my bedroom. And standing there, beautiful, was my mother, he said. But she looked about 30 years younger than when she passed. And now I know this is a bit Hollywood, David, but she said that, son, I've passed on and I'm moving on now. I'm going to a better place and I just want to say my final goodbyes. And with that, this light, this beautiful light, dissipated and the room was turned into blackness again. And now there is another part of that story because she went round all my father's brothers, my uncles, and said the same thing, that she has moved on. And that's a wonderful story,
Yeah.
It is, And people may ask, well, why don't I get my mother or father coming to see me? And basically, part of that may be because the more psychically aware one is, then they're on that same kind of wavelength. It's like a radio. You're tuning in, you're tuning it up, we've got it. Maybe the more psychic you are, you can accept and receive people from the other side.
Yes.
But that's not the be-all and end-all answer. There may be other answers, but that's what I think,
Yeah, I think it's quite acceptable. It's quite a weird, it's a weird story that everyone has the same experience as well. I mean, you don't hear that very often, do you?
No, and then we were in a case. In Greenford near London. This woman had Well, this was a case that really threw me over the fence because she claimed that she was being raped by a spirit or a ghost. You get this incubi and succubi spirits, and she was really terrified. She was really shaken up. Now, we had to ensure, as a research society, you have to ensure that they're not pulling your leg, that they're really, really genuinely concerned. Then we have to ascertain if they're on drugs or medication, or they want to get into the newspapers, they want to spin a yarn. We have to dot the I's and cross the T's, and I was convinced that she was the real deal. And anyway, my partner at the time, we went out the house for a cigarette, and the psychic medium was inside the house with this lady. And my partner and I then came back into the house after finishing our cigarette. We sat in a chair. I looked at the lady who was sitting in a chair in the middle of the room, and then I let out a big, girly scream. And at the same time, my partner, she let out a big scream as well. She says, "Malcolm, can you see it?" And I says, "Yeah." Now, what we were looking at, David, all around this poor woman's body were these beautiful aqua blue marine lights pervading her whole body, descending on her head, along her arms, along her body, along her shoulders, along her legs. Absolutely beautiful. And the poor woman's going, what are you looking at? And I said to the psychic, I says, "What the bloody hell's going on here?" And she says, "Oh, Malcolm, whilst you and your partner were out having a cigarette, I administered psychic healing on the lady due to her distress. And so what you are seeing is the remnants of that psychic healing. It's very rare. I'm surprised you saw it, Malcolm. But I'll never forget that as well. That was crazy."
That's amazing, yeah. Blimey. Excuse my language. It's, I don't think I've ever heard that one before.
No, I mean, it's I've had a lot of strange stuff. I mean, I can tell you a few more. I've got quite a lot of stories to tell you, actually.
Yeah, I think we should be able to point out, because you had you started up the SPI, didn't you? That's the Strange Phenomena Investigations. What year did you start that up, Malcolm, if you remember?
That was I mean, I was obviously well interested in the whole range of paranormal phenomena before 1979, that's when I founded it.
Yeah.
But it was on the back of the Scotland's famous Livingston incident.
Right.
I went up the day after. I met Bob Taylor. I met Andy Collins and Martin Keatman. They were working for Bufora at the time. They were on site. They were taking plaster cast moulds of the marks and indentations of the grass. I saw Detective Sergeant Ian Wark, and I realised then that technically, as far as I knew, I was just only about 19 or something. Nobody in Scotland was really dealing with the paranormal. I think they were the Scottish Society for Psychical Research, admittedly, but other than that society, nobody. I mean, today Scotland is awash with paranormal societies. So it was 1979. I went, you know what? I better get the ball rolling here. And we got the wonderful Ron Halliday worked with us, and we travelled the length and breadth of Scotland, investigating haunted houses. Bonnybridge came up, of course, later on in the years, and it's just been a roller coaster, really has.
Yeah, it says. I think with the internet and everything's kicked off from that as well, hasn't it? Over the last few years, 10 years or so, I think it's really taken off. There's been a couple of spin-offs from your SPI as well. I think there's a couple of Scottish ones, isn't there? Apart from your Hastings one, which I suppose is your base, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, what really, really pleases me, oh my God, I'm so happy with this, that your good self, David, has done SPI East Anglia. We have SPI Edinburgh, SPI Glasgow with the wonderful Alison Dunlop, and SPI Dundee, SPI Inverness. So we've branched out. We have these branches going to various parts of the UK, doing the good work that needs to be done to try and ascertain what's behind these wonderful mysteries.
Yeah, they've got quite a good membership as well, haven't they? On Facebook as well. I think Alison's one got about over 1,000 people on her site. So if anyone wants to look, it's if you look for SPI, is it called Glasgow? SPI Glasgow?
Just SPI Scotland.
Yes, SPI Scotland. Yeah. I know there's a couple of Scottish ones. So if anyone wants to look that up, I'll actually put links to it up on the Paranormal Dimensions page anyway a little bit later. I intend to try and get Alison on the show as well in a few weeks, so I'm sure she'll have a few stories to tell.
Yeah, and of course we have our Scottish UFO and Paranormal Conference coming up on June the 22nd at Glasgow University.
That's right, yeah.
And I'll be speaking about the infamous Cottingley fairies, which, yes, they are a fake, of course, but I'll be talking right from day dot how that story transpired and how Sir Arthur Conan Doyle got fooled by these two small girls.
Yeah.
And I'll be showing the photographs. I was a lovely lady by the name of Rita Gould, who is a psychic, kindly gave me some of the photographs that she was passed on as well, and drawings and illustrations. So I'll be showing all this at my talk in Glasgow as well. Yeah.
Yeah, you've got to cover all the things that you find out are fake as well, haven't you? Because otherwise, if you think everything, if you go along with the stories that everything is real, then that you're on a wrong one for the beginning, aren't you? Yeah, you've got to point out the fakes or the proven fakes.
Yeah, definitely, and I mean that's our remit. SPI's remit is if we unmask anybody, we've got to shout for the rooftops,
yes,
and because these people will keep going on and going into history, and this is why sometimes it's maybe even good to look back in history to revisit perhaps famous cases in America and Britain and France, and with a new take on it, with a 2019 take, and see if we can explain these historical cases. We should really do that, you know.
Yeah, I know, because when you Google some of these old cases, quite a lot of the time they're still going along as being true, aren't they? You know, and because you seem to get a spur. One goes off to say, "Oh, this is fake," and another spur will go off and say, "This is true." And it's the people that are going off and thinking it's true. They're the ones you've got to worry about.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we've got to ask ourselves what constitutes the evidence that would convince Joe Public. And I say it in my talks, and you've probably heard me say it a million times, David, but is it a photograph? Well, they can be faked. Piece of video footage, that can be faked.
Especially nowadays, yeah, it's so easy to fake stuff.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think it's just, it comes from the heart. If you're speaking to someone and they tell you, what they saw, and maybe they could back up with a photograph and you could test it. But sometimes it comes from the heart, and you will know straight away when you're speaking to someone that they're telling you the truth. But
not always. I've had experience when you can believe somebody and they're such a good liar, but as you know, but we won't go into that.
No, not at all.
But yeah, I know exactly what you're saying about this proving the things that are real and what are false. It's and I know you're pretty passionate about it.
Yeah, I mean, I remember a lot of years ago, I was this chap says, "Malcolm, do you want to see my face change into various faces?" I went, "Well, you're talking transfiguration here." He says, "Yeah." It was a chap called Ray Todd, and I went, to cut a long story short, I went to his tenement building in Edinburgh quite a number of years ago. And initially I went there without the video camera. Later on I did take the camera. Anyway, cut to the chase. So he kind of dimmed the lights. I could still see his face. He had some kind of airy-fairy music playing in the background. And he says, "Stare at the bridge of my nose." Now, I swear to God, hand on heart, suddenly, because he was a bald man, suddenly he grew hair, and then he had a great big Rasputin beard.
Really?
And then his face changed, and I let out. I love these girly screams, but even I did it again. I let a big girly scream, and I went, "Oh my God!"
Well, my voice just raised there. Went, really?
Yeah. And then I took a video camera another time, and I played it at the SPI meetings in the Cowan Centre in Stirling when I lived in Scotland. And half the room went, "Oh my God!" and the other half went, "What?" And then, to cut another long story short, it ended up on a TV show with Amanda Holden and our husband at the time. He was in Coronation Street. I forget his name.
Right.
It'll come back to me.
I can't tell you because I don't watch it, but there you go.
And so they used it in their television show, and they saw the face change as well. And it's just an illustrative incident of transfiguration, and it's wonderful to see. But then again, if you're staring at someone's face, your eyes relax, your eyes start to water, and then it's like pareidolia or simulacrum. You'll see what you want to see. And the thing with SPI is we get so many photographs sent to us. "Oh, look, It's a UFO, and it's not. It's something else. It looks like it's a bird frozen in flight. But
or
you know
a
that.
bag floating about or something.
Exactly. But this is why I'm really looking forward to going to Rendlesham Forest later this year. And it's been a wee while since I was in those woods, and by golly, what a place that is! It's wonderful.
It is. It's got its own. It's got its own enigma. I think is a good word for it, and it's got certainly some strange things going on there.
Yeah, I've been there. You know, when we ran the SPI meetings, we took minibuses with John Wickham, Judy Jaffa, and other people, Max Burns, and we all went down there, met up with Brenda Butler, and we had some great times. And I remember it was a lovely night. But I'm standing next to somebody, and you couldn't even see him. It was so dark. You know,
it is. It's pitch dark in there. Yeah. And I'll just point out at this stage, Malcolm's going to be talking at the Colonel Holt Returns to Woodbridge conference in September the 8th in Suffolk, which is just down the road to me. And he's stood in kindly because somebody has dropped out, and Malcolm kindly offered to stand in. So I'm quite grateful for that, and hopefully it will be a good weekend. If anyone wants to come and buy tickets, you can just contact me. But Conal Holt's looking forward to coming over again, and we don't know how many more times he's going to be able to do that because he's sort of getting on a bit now. He's sort of 79. He'll be next year, so how long he'll want to keep travelling backwards and forwards, I don't know. He is quite fit and he loves getting around, but I'm sure Malcolm is looking forward to meeting him, aren't you, Malcolm?
Yeah, definitely.
You missed out the last time, didn't you? Unfortunately.
I did, and I've seen all the great photographs. Everybody getting their photographs taken with him, so I'd love to meet the guy and have a wee chat. And we're all aware of the case, of course, and the connotations thereafter. But yeah, he's a lovely guy.
Yeah, we won't go into that one because I think it gets done to death a bit sometimes, doesn't it? I know I think you've got a picture of him holding one of your books, haven't you? But,
I think you took that picture, David?
I did. I took that picture. Yeah.
Good lad.
But hopefully you'll get some more anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll leave it to you, Malcolm. What do you want to talk about next?
Well, I mean, I'll tell you a few more stories of my ghostly past and all that, just because it's all interesting for me. One time we were dealing with a case in Kilsyth. It's another small town near Glasgow, and this single parent, this lady with some young kids, had been getting ghostly manifestations in her home. She was getting touched on the shoulder. There were cold spots. There were electricity would come on and come off with the television. Taps would turn on and off, and all the normal stuff. She was absolutely terrified. We got involved, and obviously we spent the night there. We experienced some of the phenomena ourselves. I was sitting on the floor, and it was like someone came up and just blew in my face. It was and there was not an open window or anything like that. She says that when she approached the house, she saw an old man upstairs peering out of the window, which frightened her. Yeah. So she went into the house, ran upstairs, and nobody was there. And some of the young kids in the street said that they could see an old man looking out of the upstairs window. Again, they told her this. And we found out later that an old man had actually died in that house.
Wow.
And so it may well be him, you know.
Yeah, call me.
And she, not just that, she had one of those stacking stereo systems, they used to have in the 1970s with the big glass.
We all had them.
I certainly did. And she was looking at the stereo system, the glass, and she saw this old man's face reflected in the glass. She turned round, nobody was there. She turned round to the stereo, the face was there. And it was not a reflection from the TV or nothing like that. And this is why I love this subject. I'm a spiritualist, David. I firmly believe in life after death, and that's due to the massive, for the massive weight of evidence that truly goes to show that there is a continuity after physical material death. And I've spoken to doctors, nurses, surgeons. I'll give you a quick doctor story here. I've spoken about it in my conferences. In Hastings here, we have a major hospital, and this woman says to me, Malcolm, can I tell you about something very, very strange? I says, of course, you've started, you don't finish. So she said that one of the leading surgeons had been off his work due to stress. I says, well, that's fine. I mean, it's a stressful job. Oh, no, you don't understand, Malcolm. I says, well, tell me. She says, well, he was walking through one of the corridors in the hospital, and he approached this elderly gentleman who was standing there, and he looked very confused. And so the doctor says, are you okay? Are you all right? I don't know. And then just then, this doctor's pager beeped, and he says, excuse me a moment, sir, I just have to take this. And his pager said that he was wanted in the resus room. So he turned round to the gentleman, and he wasn't there. But he just presumed that maybe had walked through the swing doors, because they were near some swing doors. Anyway, he went into the resus room. There was a gentleman on the bed with the paddles, the paddles to bring you back to life on his chest, the big circular pads. And I think you know what's coming. He looked down there, and there was the same guy on the bed. Now, this is where there's a little twist to this story, David, because what happened then was they says, like, okay, let's rewind the videotapes, the video cameras of that corridor and see what, if anything's there. So they watched the videotapes. They saw the doctor, the surgeon walking down the corridor. They saw the surgeon stopping. They saw the surgeon talking to nothing. He was talking to thin air. And so when the surgeon saw his own self talking to nothing, that was it. He was off. He signed himself off work. And so this is why people may say that life after death, it's all, oxygen starvation to the brain. People are presuming the white light. Not for me. Only in some instances, yeah, but not wholly.
No, I'm with you there. I mean, you do hear stories that people have floated above their bed wherever they've died, and they're actually telling you, or near-death experiences, and they've seen shoes on window ledges or on top of a cupboard, haven't they, and things like that. And when they've come back, they've actually told them about that, and there it is. Yeah, there's no way they could see some of these things.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a proven fact. People have seen this. And I mean, I remember, as I say, when I was very small, maybe about, 10, 11 years of age, I stayed in this small village called Tullibody in Clackmannanshire near Alloa. And my mother came in and she had bought me this new pair of shoes, David, and oh my God, I didn't like them, I didn't like them. And I was a nasty wee shit back in those days. And so I looked at these shoes and I threw them down onto the chair, which was right next to the living room window. Now, I can tell you with hand on heart, David, those shoes that I was throwing down onto the settee was definitely hitting the settee without a shadow of a doubt. My mother at that time had turned her back and walked away. Now, at this point, the shoes stopped in midair, floated up and smashed through the window.
No.
Smashed through the window. And my mother turned round, she says, why did you do that? I didn't. And I'll never forget it. It's like, what the hell's going on there,
That is a strange one. I like it.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. And I mean, we were also, obviously, we can speak about the Sauchie poltergeist later, but there was actually 2 poltergeist cases in Sauchie, one of which was on Gartmorn Road, which is not, so far away from Park Crescent, where the 1961 occurred. With the Gartmorn Road poltergeist, it was affecting 3 houses together. And such was the panic and distress of the 3 families in this block of 3 that the 2 edge blocks joined forces with the middle block, and they all slept in this one big house. Wow. When we became involved, they said that a lot of noises came from the loft, and we inspected the loft for any birds or rats or mice that may have got in to make any noises. There were nothing like that. And I'll just tell you briefly some of the things that had transpired there. For instance, she was walking into the kitchen, one of the ladies, and the kitchen drawer opened itself and a knife floated out of the drawer and came towards her and dropped at her feet. Then on another occasion, the family dog, never ever ventured upstairs. It was terrified to go upstairs. And then when they came back from shopping, they heard bark, bark, bark. And they went, Christ, is that the dog upstairs? So they ran up the stairs, and the dog was locked in a bedroom. There was a little snib in the bedroom door behind the door. And they they had to get ladders to climb in the back window. And when they saw the dog, there was great big gouges in the woodwork of the door. It's frantically trying to get out. And so whether we don't know what happened there, that was pretty bizarre as well.
Well, a camera would have been handy, wouldn't it, in the house? But that's a weird one. If the dog didn't like going upstairs, and all of a sudden, when nobody's there, he goes upstairs. Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, and then one of the girls who lived in the family home, one of the daughters, saw her mother, or what appeared to be her mother, descending the stairs in the family home, wearing a kind of a nightie that she wasn't familiar with. So she shouted to her, "Mother, what?" Because she looked very blank, "Mum, you okay? You okay?" And then as she descended the stairs, this so-called mother of the daughter, the vision was lost because she had to go around the corner, and then she never appeared. So the daughter went to the corner, and she wasn't there at all. And then she found out that her mother wasn't even in the house at the time she saw her. And this is a common facet of paranormal phenomena, that people see people in these places. Now, I remember doing a case in, it was Lauriston, yes, near Falkirk. And this lady, again, troubled with paranormal phenomena. And many times she would walk into her home and it was like there was a party going on, all the noise and the clinking of glasses, and then quietness. Another time she walked into her family home, she saw an old man in a tweed suit looking at a wooden sailing ship cupped in his hands. And she says, "What are you doing in my house?" And he just melted, he disappeared. And on another occasion, she saw an Aladdin-type slipper suddenly materialise on the chair. When she woke up one time, she saw an old black and white photograph album with the pages turning in front of her. But the reason I tell this story is it had connotations as to the last one. And what I mean by that is, she says, "Malcolm, you appeared in my house." I went, "What?" "Yeah, I saw you. You were standing in the hallway and I approached you and you disappeared." And I went, "Well, I can tell you, Jean, I was working at United Glass in a factory at that time. It wasn't me, So it's weird how the paranormal can do this kind of shape-shifting people who are still living and plant them in these haunted houses. It's weird.
Yeah, it is. It's weird. I don't think I've heard that story before. But I know you're so full of all these stories here. I don't know where to go next with you. What about the? I don't know if you want to talk, unless you want to talk about that later. Your Loch Ness extravaganza, because you're one of the few people that's been down in Loch Ness, haven't you? In the small submarines.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, being a Scot, my father regaled me with tales of this water creature, and I eagerly, listened to all the tales. Started to research it myself, and then we went family trips up to Inverness and Loch Ness, and it absolutely captivated me. This 24-mile loch, and the mood of the loch, and and when I grew older, teenage years, I decided to go up myself and interview many, many people who resided at the shores of Loch Ness, and did a lot of audio tapes, camped a lot on cold nights, and never saw nothing myself at that time. And it was a wonderful time. I mean, I've interviewed Father Gregory Brucey, who's sadly no longer with us. He was a monk at the Benedictine Abbey at Fort Augustus. And he, in 1971, took down an organist from Westminster Cathedral to the shores of the loch. And it was a lovely morning. The loch was like a sheet of glass. And he says, "There you go. That's the famous Loch Ness." Now, you could not make this up, because then suddenly coming up from the depths of Loch Ness with this grey, long, tapering neck with a small sheep-like head attached to it. And it was thrusting about for maybe about 5-6 seconds, and then it just descended with a splash back into Loch Ness. And it's just one of these stories. I interviewed former water bailiff Alex Campbell on the shores of Loch Ness, and he was technically, Alex was the first guy who really propelled the Loch Ness Enigma into the public domain, because he was a correspondent with the Inverness Courier at the time, and he picked up on a story in 1933 by a woman, and it was featured in the paper. And in 1934, Alex saw the creature himself, which I've interviewed him on audio tape. It's wonderful. The same thing, this long tapering neck, etc. And as the years have gone by, I've visited many times. And in 1994, I had the opportunity, as you mentioned, to go down in the Loch Ness submarine. Very, very briefly, the Loch Ness submarine was sponsored by Swatch watches, a Swiss watch. It was painted in red and white, of course. It was only about a 25-foot submarine, very, very claustrophobic and tiny inside.
Yeah, I was going to say, I bet that's a little bit scary, isn't it? Because it's pretty murky down there, isn't it?
Well, that's what I thought, but as we descended into the depths of Loch Ness, it didn't turn out to be that way at all. The front nose cone of the submarine was a toughened glass, and outside at the top of the glass was 5 or 6 very strong, powerful halogen lights, which illuminated the depths and the darkness of Loch Ness. And we went down past 400 or 500 feet, and at that point we were at the loch floor. Loch Ness is just under 1,000 feet deep, but we went to the loch floor, and it was just like sandy silt, and just be able to switch his phone off.
Oh yeah, The Exorcist.
And so we went across this loch floor, and it was sandy silt, and then the loch just descended. It just fell away. And I said to the skipper of the submarine, "Can we go down there?" And he says, "No, we've got to stick to our allotted course." But it was a wonderful time. It only lasted about an hour, this trip, but I'll never forget it. Yeah, never saw Nessie though.
No, I wouldn't have expected. I always thought it was supposed to be very murky and lots of weeds and mud around it. But if you could see more than, why are we led to believe that then? I wonder.
Because when all the initial books were written, anybody who went down, they only went down to a depth of maybe about 100 feet or so. Sorry, David, can I take this phone? So as we traversed the loch floor, it was a sandy silt, and you could see some of the stones embedded into the sandy silt, and it really was quite clear. Now, people have said that it's murky, and but some of the books at the time in the 70s and 80s, Loch Ness was quite murky, because people at that time maybe only went down to about a depth of 100 feet. Now, you're getting a lot of peat and silt coming down from the hillside, and it is very, very murky. But once you penetrate that and go past that, it's actually quite crystal clear. And that only became known, obviously, when that Loch Ness submarine came there in the 1990s. So it was quite a trip, yeah.
Yeah, well, I bet it was fascinating. I've been there a couple of times. It's actually massive. If no one's ever been to Loch Ness, I mean, it's probably a few of our US audience that may never have been there. It's actually massive. It's like an ocean. Well, it's not about an ocean, but it's like a sea, isn't it? It's very vast. It's like looking out at sea.
Yes, I mean, like I say, it's 24 mile long. About 7 million years ago, it's speculated that Loch Ness was open to the sea at the Inverness end, and then there was a land upheaval which cut it off from the sea. But I don't believe that we're looking at plesiosaurs, an ancient aquatic dinosaur, for want of a better word. I really don't. Because plesiosaurs could not extend their neck with the vertebrae they have.
So what would be your theory then? Would you think it's the same creature being seen, or is it a varied family that might have been sort of landlocked somehow?
Yeah, I mean, I do believe there's a family of creatures in Loch Ness, without a shadow of a doubt. And the best evidence is not always witness testimony, because most of the witness testimony comes from tourists who are only there for 5 minutes and they're away back to America or Hong Kong. So they will see, many times they will see what's known as a standing wave. Now, there's a number of boats or ships traverse Loch Ness. One goes one way, one goes the other way. And the bow wave that each of those boats create this ripples, create this standing wave, which looks like one hump or several humps. And to the untrained eye, it can look very mystical and magical, but it's nothing but water, really, you know.
Yeah.
But I think, to answer your question, I think it's some form of strange fish, for want of a better word, or creature. Maybe it is a descendant of the plesiosaur, or a descendant from some ancient animal, which it's not an air-breathing animal. It's an accidental breaking of the water surface, because you have a number of fish feeding it just below, maybe 10 feet below the surface of Loch Ness, and this creature comes up and penetrates the water and dives back down again. So it's something. Sonar, as I said, sonar is the best evidence. Back in 1987, Operation Deep Scan was a flotilla of boats, which at that time had the best sophisticated sonar on each boat, and they traversed the loch in a line, in a row, up and down, swept up and down. And they managed to capture a number of strange, anomalous blips on their sonar, which were not grouped shoals of fish, elongated, tapering creatures. And when one of the boats went back to see if it could locate it, it was gone. So it's a wonderful mystery. I mean, obviously,
so you did say creatures there, so there was several of the same thing, was it?
Yeah. And I mean, I was one of the books that I enjoyed writing the most is most certainly the Nessie book.
Yeah, it's called, for anyone out there, I'll put a picture of it on the site. It's The Monsters of Loch Ness, The History and the Mystery by Malcolm Robinson. I think it's about 800 pages, isn't it, Malcolm?
It's near enough.
Sorry, not 800, but maybe that's a little bit. So you certainly get on for 600 pages there. It's quite a fascinating read. I mean, I've got to say, I haven't read all of it, but it's one of those books you can dive in and out of looking at certain episodes in it, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I felt it best. I mean, there's a number of books about Loch Ness, and I tried very much not to kind of go over old ground, although sometimes it's hard not to.
Well, you've got to,
yeah. Thankfully for me, as a young boy, I kept as many press cuttings as I could from the early 1970s and the 1980s and 1990s, and a lot of them have featured in my book. But admittedly, yes, you know, we've got to be careful with the newspapers. We know that they can put a lot of salt and pepper on the stories, but in the main, I managed to track down some of the witnesses and I confirmed the tales. But we initially start with ancient Scotland, the ancient sea mariners. There were many sightings of strange creatures in the Atlantic and the Pacific. And one wonders, where are those sightings now? We look at the Irish lochs across there. We look at some of the lakes in Siberia and Russia, each of who have got a tradition of a lake monster. And then we look back into the prehistory of Loch Ness and other Scottish lochs like Loch Long, Loch Lomond, and Loch Morar, which has its own chapter in this book. It's only 11 miles long, but it has a creature as well. So we're looking at all that, and then we look at the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. We go right through the whole shooting match. The book then finishes by what could it be then? You know, all the possibilities at what Nessie could be. And effectively, I leave it up to the reader to, after having read the book, to decide themselves, you know, what they feel in their heart is possibly the right answer.
Yeah, there's even suggests elephants, doesn't it? Because there was a circus in town, wasn't there?
Absolutely, that's correct, and that's right. You know your stuff. Yeah, there was there was a visiting circus which was going to Inverness, and they travelled one of the roads at Loch Ness, and some of the elephants allegedly went into the shallower part of Loch Ness and did their little thing. And of course, elephants at that time were not widely known or seen in Scotland, so some of the little boats further up the loch are going, what the hell is that? You know, and so that went into folklore and mystery and all the rest of it. But yeah, I mean, there's lots of theories. But for me, definitely something there. Definitely.
Yeah. I mean, there's even suggestions of interdimensional actions, isn't there? That you must know about the interdimensional theories about things are coming and going from different dimensions, a bit like the abominable snowman and the Yeti and everything else.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the scenarios that we looked at, and also tulpas. And tulpas is a creative thought form, if you like. The more people think about Loch Ness and think about what could be in there, maybe somehow that generates an image to form. We saw it in the skull experiments. That's a different thing. We saw it with SORA. It's a Canadian research group. I think it was in the 70s. They conjured up this mythical cavalier type guy. Gave him a name, gave him a history. He didn't exist, but suddenly, things were happening in the seance room relating to this guy. And then the ancient yogis and mystics claimed that they have created these tulpa beings and stuff. So maybe what's going on in Loch Ness could be some form of mystical tulpa, but that's pure speculation, not fact.
Yeah, it's quite an amazing thought, actually, that you're actually manufacturing these things with your minds. Yeah, that's weird. Well, I'll leave it to you, Malcolm. I've got so many cases in front of me that you've written about. I don't know where to go next with it.
Well, I mean,
I know you've got another book coming out as well, haven't you? Your seventh book. Is that almost completed now?
It has been done. It's with the publisher because there's about 82 photographs going in this one.
Wow, that's a lot, yeah.
It is, and the case and the Bob Taylor incident appeared in my first book, and I decided that as a lot of years had progressed since then, a number of different theories have come up to perhaps explain this. So I decided to revisit the Bob Taylor case, tell the initial story, then go through all the various 11 theories to explain it. I tracked down some of Bob Taylor's friends, got their statements, tracked down some of the people who erected the fencing at the area, tracked down some of the police officers. We took stuff from television shows, etc. And one of the more funny story now, but it wasn't at the time, it was an ex-girlfriend of mine. When we kind of broke up, she knew that the only way to hurt me was get a hold of these famous Bob Taylor trousers that was ripped by these devices. So she had her fingers in one of these rips in the trousers and she was ready to rip it to shreds. So, it's funny looking back, but I was almost on my knees, David, saying, no, don't do that.
Actually, I know you've probably told this story so many times, but there's probably listeners across America and they may not have heard this story. Would you mind sort of just elaborating on it a bit so that people know the story?
Yeah, well, it occurred on November the 9th, 1979, the year that I started SPI. It came on the back of this event. Very, very briefly, forestry worker Robert Taylor was employed by the Livingston Forestry Department, and his job was to ensure that no cattle or sheep strayed into Decmont Woods, which is near Livingston, Newtown. Very, very mundane job. He had been a forester in all his life in various parts of Scotland, and on the morning of November the 9th, he jumped into his pickup truck, accompanied by his Irish Red Setter dog Lara. They then exited the truck, got out and started walking down this forestry ride. Now, at the end of the forestry ride, there's a clearing. And as he approached the clearing, he was absolutely gobsmacked to see hovering in this clearing, this massive dome-shaped object, this grey dome-shaped object with a flange going around its perimeter, with cross-like projections sticking up from the flange. So he's standing there, David, absolutely transfixed. And his dog, as you would, yeah. and his dog's barking beside him. And he could suddenly dematerialise and solidified again and dematerialised. And you could see the young trees behind the object. And then suddenly, what resembled 2 Second World War sea mines, those spherical balls that you got in the North Atlantic with the spikes to disrupt the shipping, descended from beneath this object, came down on the grass, rolled across the grass, and approached Mr. Taylor. They then extended his projections, his rod-like projections, towards his body, forcibly grabbing him at the hips. And at this point, he remembers a horrible burning smell, like burning brake linings, and a swishing or a swooshing noise, as if you had a school cane and swishing it through the air. And then bang, he lost consciousness. When he regained consciousness, the larger object was gone, the smaller objects were gone, but on the grass were over 40 indentations, circular and triangular indentations, and track-like marks appeared there as well. So he managed to reach his pickup truck. He tried to radio base with the microphone thing, but he couldn't. He had lost his voice. He had a nasty headache. He had a graze under his chin, and he staggered. He reversed the truck into a ditch. He had to stagger back home to his home in Deans, and when his wife saw him, she went, "My goodness, Bob, what the hell has happened to you?" Because his trousers were torn, his clothes were muddy. And he uttered those famous words, "I've been attacked." And she says, "Attacked? Attacked by what, you know?" And he said, "Look," he says, "by a spaceship." "Oh, there's no such thing as a spaceship. Come in, I'll get the doctor." She duly called the doctor. He made a thorough examination of Mr. Taylor. Then they called for his boss, Mr. Malcolm Drummond, who was the forestry boss. They notified the police because when all said and done, joking aside, it was an assault by person or persons unknown. So the police had to become involved. They fenced off the area and obviously realising it was a serious event. I got involved near enough the following day. I went up, sat down with Bob, interviewed him, saw he was still shaking. We went up to see the area, and you could clearly see the marks in the grass, although snow had fallen that previous night. It was blanketed by snow. We brushed away the snow. And, and last year, it took me 3 years fighting with the West Lothian Council to get signage erected in Decmont Woods, because so many people, David, were coming from not only the UK, but from Europe to try and see this site, and they never found it because there were no directions. So as Rendlesham Forest has got this signage now, I says, well, you know what? I'm going to try and get it for Livingston. So I only got that last year after a 3-year campaign, toing and froing and fighting and bitching and this and that. We got there, and there is a signage board up there and directions, marker ways, etc. So again, I'm really pleased at that, you know.
Well, it's got to be good for tourism anyway, isn't it? You know, anyway, whichever way you look at it.
Yeah, and later this year, in November the 9th, the 40th anniversary is this year of the Robert Taylor case. And
wow. When you think about it, 40 years it is, isn't it?
Yeah. It is. So I'm giving a talk at his old hometown in Deans at Livingston Community Station Centre, and I'm giving a talk about the case there. So I just felt it right after 40 years to give a lecture to the local townsfolk, and I'm looking forward to that. That's happening, as I say, November the 9th, 2019, yeah.
That sounds great, yeah, excellent. There is a thing. Do you actually think that something happened, or I know you've been asking questions about it, and your book is. I don't want you to give your book away because, but you've been sort of looking at all the theories. That did he imagine it, or did he dream it, or was he really attacked by somebody else and he made a story up, but I know you've looked at all that, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, as I say, there are 11 theories. Some of them are quite bizarre. But having said that, never, ever throw the baby out with the bathwater. We may laugh and joke at things that are so ridiculous, but they turn out to be true. You know, it's like we shouldn't laugh at. We laughed at Marconi, that'll never work, and it did. We laughed at John Logie Baird, the inventor of television. Oh, that'll never work, it has. We laughed at the Wright brothers. That'll never fly. Oh, sorry, it's flown. And just because something looks ridiculous. But to answer your question, I've looked at all the various theories, and I give them marks out of 10 in my book, by the way. And one of them is the Atropa belladonna, which is a poisonous berry, which, if ingested if you take more than 5 or 6, it can knock you out and kill you effectively. Even if you rub the juice in your hands, it can penetrate your arm and your hands, and it can you can pass over. I know it's
a nasty
very deadly.
Yeah.
So we looked at that, and I don't give that much credence. We looked at the Water Tower by Phil Fenton. Again, this man's entirely correct to say what he has to say. It's his theory. He believes that Robert Taylor was not at the location he said he was, but over the other side of the M8 motorway, where there is this big dome-shaped water tower. Now, yeah, it looks a wee bit like it, but then we've got to answer the objects that descended from the craft, etc. I won't go into it just now. I'll all be coming up with,
yeah, it's going to be in your book, but yeah, I suppose you've got to look at these things. I mean, then you've got to look at the character of the person who's telling the story, haven't you? I think, as far as you believe, he's actually telling the truth.
Well, yes, I met him many times, David, over the years.
As his character tells you, it's yeah.
I'm convinced that that he's telling the truth. He didn't want to be involved with that. He didn't expect to see that. And when he did see that, he was thrown into the twilight zone. His world just turned upside down, and he was hounded by the media, by ufologists. He took a family vacation a day or so after it to get away from the hullabaloo. And when he came back, it was still ongoing, And I mean, the other theories by Stuart Campbell, of course, it was black ball lightning. Then it was the planet Venus. It was a mirage of Venus, etc.
Yeah.
So we'll be looking at all these theories in great detail in this book. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting stuff. I'm looking forward to it anyway. Anyway, we were talking about the mind and everything. I mean, what do you consider? Well, what's your thoughts on reincarnation? And I don't know if you've been into that in any of your books. Have you reincarnation? Maybe that's something for a book in the future.
I think I may have touched it gingerly in a couple of my paranormal series books, but only presenting a couple of tales from other people. But to answer your question, reincarnation, this is a biggie, a big biggie. I mean, a lot of cases come from India. Dr. Ian Stevenson researched a lot of tales from there. Young kids saying, "You're not my mum, you're not my dad. My dad lives 5 miles down the track," and then they take them there, and they could tells them everything about it. We have to be careful, and the reason I say that is, might it not just be cellular memory? And what I mean by that, David, is that genetic memory, inherited memory, if you got hypnotically regressed and taken back in time, you may conjure up a story of a seafaring captain. You believe in your heart it's you. Oh, you were that seafaring captain. I was on the high seas. But then it might just be when you check your family tree going through the generations, but David Young had a great grandfather who actually was on the high seas. So genetically, the gene pool in your makeup and your body still retains that genetic memory from family history. So that may answer some reincarnation. You may think you lived before, but you are reliving your family tree's previous ancestors' life.
Yeah, I suppose that is a possibility. But then you get people that come out with all these ancient languages, don't they? Dead languages. I mean, do you think that could be the same sort of thing, or?
It's crazy because when you get some child prodigies, you put them in front of a piano and they give you Bach or Beethoven without a faulty note. And wait a minute, what's going on? Because these guys have not physically trained to learn the piano. How on earth have they learned this, People who go under surgery and started speaking Spanish, they've never been to Spain, or they come out with a different language. But having said that, I do believe, for all the alternative explanations, I do believe that yes, maybe we do come back, and we only come back to learn through our faults and try and, I know it sounds Hollywood, to try and learn through our faults and be that better person. And as such, where somebody dictates, okay, you've done your time, you don't have to come back. So maybe there's a bit of both involved with this.
Well, it's one of those unknown quantities that we'll never find out until we're actually passed over ourselves, I presume.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely. And but that's what's so fascinating about this wonderful subject of ours, the paranormal. There's so many different facets to it. It's so intriguing. And that's why I'm interested in Nessie and Bigfoot, Sasquatch, UFOs has played a big part in my life, through Bonnie Bridge, through the Fife case and various other cases. These, if future research dictates that certain cases that I've studied have a natural explanation, I'll be the first to tell about it. I'll be the first to shout about it, because I don't want to hide under a bushel. If a case is another answer, it can be verified, then by golly, I'll say it, But I mean, we had Bill Rourke down here from York, and you have to get him on your show, David.
I know, yeah. Bless him, old Bill. He phones me up every couple of weeks, at least every once a week, anyway, or every couple of weeks. And he's always got a little story to tell about his latest adventures. But I know you had quite a good adventure up in Hastings. I was saying up in Hastings. It's actually down in Hastings, didn't you, when he visited you?
Yes, we went, initially we went up the East Hill and we took a number of photographs, and then we were down actually in one of the streets. It was about between 11 and 12 at night, I think. And he was taking photographs of the sky, and he was getting these strange orb lights coming up. And then suddenly I saw with my naked eye this explosion of light in the sky. It wasn't a firework, nothing like that. It only lasted maybe 2 to 3 seconds, David, and just intensified, and it was a white circular orb. It stayed there for, as I say, 2 to 3 seconds, and it just disappeared. Thankfully, Bill had been taking a photograph of the sky at that area, and we managed to capture it on photograph. And so, it backs up what Bill's been saying. Bill's had some amazing photographs of orbs, etc. But anybody that knows me knows that I still believe some orbs can be just moisture, dust, insects in flight.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
But some of the stuff that Bill's getting is not that, and his encounters with shadow people, etc., is equally astonishing. I mean, some of the bizarre stories that Bill's told me, one of them comes to mind right now as I'm speaking to you. He was going out of his front door to go to one of his fields to take photographs of these orbs, etc. He just walked out his front door and he walked into a chimney. I know it sounds daft, a long, tall chimney. He looked up, he bent his head backwards, and he could see all the red brickwork going away up. I went, what the hell is this? He could hear the strains of Coronation Street in the living room being played, because the door wasn't fully shut. What the hell is this? And then suddenly it just disappeared, and he could see the other houses in the street and everything. Now, that's just totally fascinating, absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just stabbing through your book as well. What you're reading? It's chapter 5. It's about Alien Bill and his amazing photographs. I know I've seen quite a few of them, and they were quite amazing. I mean, Bill was actually his hand was glowing, wasn't it? For several months when he was having these things going on.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, there was a period of years, it doesn't happen now, where his arm glowed in his hand, or his part of his forearm and his hand would glow. And this was verified by other people, and he's got them in various photographs. I think there's some of these photographs in the book. But he's also taken this cone of light, which he got at the Kelpies, which is two massive big horse structures made out of kind of silver plating near Falkirk. And he went there himself. He got a taxi out to the location. He was staying in the area at the time. He was up for a Scottish conference. And he went there himself, and he managed to capture this big conical light coming from the background through the two horses' heads. And that's in my book as well. And we can't explain
I'm looking at the picture now, actually. It's on page 323.
Okay.
And you can see Bill's hand alight as well at the side of it.
That's right. So, I mean, it's fair play. We have to look at to individuals like Alien Bill. There's other people on Facebook who are taking similar photographs, strange, bizarre stuff, and everybody needs to be looked at and spoken to. And Bill has got his own book coming out, I believe, if not later this year, certainly next year, and I'm looking forward to that one, I'll tell you.
Well, I think he was trying to get it out last year, but we're still waiting. I think he's having so many pictures put into it, isn't he? That I don't know how cost wise it's going to be getting it actually out into the market, but I think it's going to be quite expensive to get it out there in the first place. Because I think he was looking at doing a hardback version, and I told him I think you might be looking something too expensive to do that. So where he's going with it, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I've told him, look, you've got to put a stop to it now. You've got enough photographs. You can do another volume. Next year.
Yeah.
You know, but fair play to him. He knows what he wants, and I'm sure that when it comes out, it'll be a cracker. And yeah, it's going to be great. It's going to be great.
Anyway, earlier you alluded to some poltergeist stories. Have you got any more poltergeist stories you can tell us? Or you can tell us about a couple anyway.
Well, yeah, I mean, the Gatmon Road one, which was not so famous as the other one, the Gatmon Road poltergeist was in the early 90s, whereas the main Socky poltergeist occurred in 1960. And very, very briefly, it's a well-known story, but again, if you've got any overseas listeners, perhaps they've not heard it, so it'll be news for them. 11 years of age, Virginia Campbell came over from Donegal in Ireland with her parents. She didn't want to come. Her life was over there. Her friends were over there. Her wee dog Toby was over there. You're coming to Scotland. We're moving, said her father. And so they came over to a little place called Socky, which is near Alloa and Stirling in central Scotland. And no sooner had they arrived at their home in Park Crescent than strange things started to happen. Her bed would vibrate. There were knockings and rappings coming from the various parts of the house. There was like a ball, a heavy medicine ball going bump, 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 bump down the stairs when nobody was there. Such was the intensity of the things that was happening in the family home that the local doctor became involved. And he himself saw what was going on. He attended Virginia in her bed one night, and next to Virginia was just a normal pillow. But suddenly it was like a shape of a head depressing on this pillow next to Virginia. And then the headboard started to rattle and bang. He took fright. He realised something was going on. And then there was other dignitaries came in as well. There was someone saw this heavy linen chest rise a few inches off the floor and clatter back down again. Now, if that wasn't enough, David, the events transpired. They moved to their school. Now, very, very briefly, because it's quite a lot going on with this story. On one occasion, Virginia was at her desk in her classroom. And back in 1960, the classrooms were up to 50, 60 pupils in these classrooms back in the day. And they were all busy writing in their jotters, doing their essay, apart from Virginia. Virginia had her forearms trying to force down this lid of her desk. And the teacher said, Virginia, stop that. What are you doing? Nothing, miss. Stop that. So Virginia released her forearms from her desk lid, and the desk lid started to flap, 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 up and down, up and down, up and down. And on another occasion, she was approaching the teacher's desk. Now, I interviewed this teacher. She says, Malcolm, at that time, 1960, I didn't know what a poltergeist was. I had no idea. She says, but I remember Virginia approached my desk, and she had a big, long wooden desk in the 1960s, big teacher's wooden desk. She says the cane was lying flat on the table, and as she approached it, the cane started, which was lying flat, started to vibrate. Then it stood up horizontally and started thumping on the table. And at that point, the desk rose up maybe a few centimetres from the floor and started spinning round. So where the teacher's stomach was in front of the long part of the desk, Now the short part of the desk was facing her stomach. At that point, the whole class just erupted in screams and terrified screams. So the teacher got up, rushed to the classroom door and says, "Okay, children, calm down, calm down. And she tried to open the door of the classroom, but found she couldn't. It was like a big, heavy man was on the other side of the door, pulling it back, so she couldn't open the door. And she said something silly like, "Oh dear, it must be windy today. The wind's maybe jammed the door," or I don't know. And then suddenly the door just released. And all these kids, it was like a cartoon. They were all 2, 3s trying to get through this door, you know.
Yeah, well, that's the fact of the matter. Well, the amount of those witnesses that actually saw that happening is actually quite amazing, isn't it?
Indeed, and that case features very heavily in my Paranormal Case Files 1 book, available on Amazon, and where the full replug there.
I'll put it all on the website anyway.
That's good. And so that was particularly worrying for Virginia. There was quite a lot involved with that case. Sadly, she moved away from the area, and to this day, I don't know where she is. I'd absolutely love to know where she is. I re-interviewed some of the former classmates of Virginia, and they went, "Malcolm, oh, by Christ, yes. Oh, did we see that? My God, yes, we saw that." They'll never forget it, you know. And when I did some re-investigation of the case when I lived in Scotland, I went to one of her auntie's door, right? And incredibly, she only stayed about, 300-400 yards from my own house. I didn't know it at the time. So I knocked on the door. "Yes, can I help you?" "Yeah, sorry to disturb you. My name's Malcolm Robinson. I'm doing a re-investigation of your niece, or your family's niece, of Virginia Campbell." Bang! The door was slammed firmly in my face. It almost took my nose off, and that's the only time in all my research a door has been firmly slammed in my face. And it was only... And another thing I should say, my mother, who's still living, thank God, she actually lives across from the Socky Poltergeist house. So I was up in Scotland recently, and looking out my mother's window, I can see the Socky Poltergeist house of 1960, and it's crazy how life takes you, you know.
Wasn't there another Socky Poltergeist as well? I think you mentioned something around about 2000. You received a telephone call as well.
There were that many cases. Well, not that many. There was another case. I can't remember off the top of my head where that was just now, David. But there was another one in Socky, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sort of just I'm picking little bits out of the book, so ask you questions on this. The trouble is, there's so much to look at. It's you got the Gartmorn Road Poltergeist as well.
Yeah.
That's Central Scotland, 1987. I don't know if you remember any of that.
Yeah, that's the one I referred to earlier, where we went up the loft and that, and they were terrified, honest to God.
Oh, yes, they had a loft, yeah, I can see that now.
They were really terrified, and I'll tell you another story. I don't normally tell this one on radio and that, but here we go.
There we go, folks, exclusive.
Here's an exclusive. I was drinking in an Alloa pub, and this man kept looking at me, drawing me daggers. And I went, "God, what have I done? Have I annoyed this guy? What have I done?" And then suddenly he rushed over to me, grabbed me by the throat, drew me up the wall like a cartoon character where my legs are not even standing on the floor. And he says, "Don't you dare go near my wife again." I went, "Pardon?" He says, "You've been seen. You've been seen going into my wife's house." And then the penny dropped. "Is that in Gartmorn Road?" "Yes, it's in Gartmorn Road." "Whoa, mate. No, I'm not there to see your wife. It's a poltergeist case." And of course, that didn't wash. So, he's heard all the excuses. "It's a poltergeist. What are you talking about?" So eventually I managed to get through to him because some of my mates were there. He says, "No, seriously, honestly, this chap has been going there. There's nothing silly going on. It's truly that." And he slowly released his grip on my neck, and my feet managed to touch the floor. But quite a scary occurrence. Another thing I could tell you about the Gartmorn case, as I'm on a roll here now,
carry on.
is we took the family to the local spiritualist church at Alloa Town Hall. And so I was there, and they told their story to the people who run the spiritualist people. And then suddenly, from a room above their heads, they heard boom, 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 boom. And so the chair lady of that night went, "Oh, what's that banging? There's nobody up there. That room's empty." So myself and all of the other people from the room went upstairs, peered through this glass, it was a glass door, and the room was blank. Dark, nobody was there. There were no lights on. And then this lady from Gartmore Road says, "Yeah, there you go. That happens all the time. They're even following us here, And that's why the subject is so special when you get stories like that.
Yeah, definitely. Have you ever dealt much with things like Ouija boards, and or have you done that many seances? And what are your opinions on what goes on with some of those seances?
Well, I do believe that Ouija boards do work, without a shadow of a doubt, on a number of levels. First of all, you've got people pushing it, or people not trying to push it, but they're maybe scared that their fingers are twitching, and so as such, everybody's fingers are twitching and it moves. So there's that. And then, of course, you have what I believe is to be earthbound spirits who are masquerading as your Auntie Agnes and your Uncle Tommy. And so they're telling you who they are, and they're not truly your kin. They're just masquerading as stuff. I do believe it works without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah, I do. So I agree with you there. Yeah, but you do get the mischievous spirits, don't you, that like to just play. They're just playing games, really.
It's a very dangerous tool. I certainly wouldn't advocate it to any kids. And even though it was manufactured in the States by John Waddington as a play game, so to speak, but it can be dangerous, and I would advocate only use by professional people who know what they're doing, not young kids for sure. Next to that, of course, you've got your table tilting, which I've tried as well. Have you tried that, David?
I have, yeah. In fact, I had a bit of an experience probably about a year or so ago now. We went to a ghost hunt night, and there was a table tipping going on, and I actually took my hands off the table, and the table was lifting up away from me, and it felt, it felt like there was a spring underneath it. It was weird. You've probably had that same experience, I don't know, but it did actually feel like there was a force under the table.
Yeah, I mean, I have tried it, and I remember we did it in a house near Alloa, and it was a massive, big, square wooden table, very, very heavy thing. This big circular, tubular wooden legs, ornate legs, and so 2 or 3 people had their hands on it, and is anybody there? The usual, and it went whoop. It rose right up on 2 legs. I went, okay, right, that's great. Okay, we know you're there now. And you can take it back down now. Now, when it started to slowly go down itself, and as it got to a certain area, it should have dropped like a stone, because it was coming down. Our hands were on top of the table, not below it to lower it down, so it should have dropped like a stone. It didn't.
Yeah, you got that.
And it just came down all of its own self, very, very slowly, and its legs touched the carpet again. That same night, by the way, that table did what I call dancing. What I mean by that is, it started going up on 2 legs, the other 2 legs, then the 2 legs, then the other 2 legs. It got that jumpy that we actually had to come off our seats, and it moved about the room. It was hilarious. It was like some comedy show. We're moving around the room, and it started to go through the hallway as well. I'll never forget it. These things are indelibly stamped on my mind.
Yeah, I mean, I must say the one where we were involved when I was doing it, it was like a small table. It wasn't a big, you could have lifted it quite easily, but it felt to me there was probably about 8 people around it. But I wanted to lift my hands off to something. Well, I think you do that to let everyone know that you're not pushing it.
Yeah.
Not to the fact that and then I'm pushing down on it. I thought, well, there's something under it, and I'm looking under. There's nothing that you could see. It was really weird,
Well, you've made me remember something else that's I've never thought about for years, and it was maybe I was about 10 or 11. I was still living in Tullibody in Scotland. And we never have an Ouija board, but my friend and I had a board of sorts, and we cut out letters, and we had one of those little comedy skulls with feet on it. You know, you wind it up and the feet goes. We're only 10 or 11-year-old. And then, so we tried to contact spirits. I was not interested in it at the time. I'm only 10 or 11. And then suddenly, my mother burst in the room. What the earth are you doing? Stop that at once. And I got a slap, and the board went up in the air and that, you know. And she sometimes tells me that story when I go back to Scotland. Oh, do you remember the time when that happened?
I imagine, I'll tell you what, but your biggest, the Bonnie Bridge UFO case, I think we can't stop this show without you going into that, I don't think.
Yeah, Bonnie Bridge is a massive thing for me. Obviously, that was a major case for me, and that started in 1992 when I heard a radio broadcast on Central FM by Jane Barry, I think her name was. She was telling their listeners about these UFO sightings across this Stirlingshire town called Bonnie Bridge. On that show was Councillor Billy Buchanan. I decided to get in touch with the show. I met up with Councillor Buchanan, and he went, "Oh, thank God you are here." I says, "Why?" He says, "Nobody believes in what's going on in Bonnie Bridge, and for you to take an interest in this, oh, Malcolm, I can't thank you enough." So to cut a long story short, I soon realised after speaking to some witnesses, hey, wait a wee minute here. We have something seriously going on here. There were, of course, the kind of cases which could have been aircraft, meteors, that type of thing. We ruled them out. Of course we ruled them out. You know, we're not silly. We ruled them out. And we checked with the national airports, the local airports like Cumbernauld Airport. We checked with the Ministry of Defence. We checked with flying clubs, the Met Office to see if there were any release of weather balloons. We dotted the I's and crossed the T's to ensure that we were doing our job correctly for the Bonnie Bridge area. Yeah. And in 1994, we had our first major conference at Falkirk Town Hall, which was absolutely sold out. Because by that time, you know, the Bonnie Bridge Enigma hadn't just went through Scotland and the UK, it went all over Europe and all over the world. And there was 800 people in the Falkirk Town Hall that night, with as many locked out, couldn't get in. I gave a presentation, Philip Mantle gave a presentation, and rock group CE4 did their wonderful UFO music on stage with dry ice flooding down off the stage into the crowd. It was great.
Yeah, good, aren't they?
They're fantastic. And so that Bonnie Bridge, clearly there was something going on, and it's still going on, but maybe not as big as it did in the 90s for sure. But Bonnie Bridge, yeah, played a big part in my life with sightings. We saw some weird stuff in the sky there. There have been a number of fascinating cases coming from there. Again, all in that first book, UFO Case Files #1, on Amazon. There's another plug.
That's all. I'm going to put all these covers on anyway, so people can know what to look for.
Yeah, and we dealt with many TV stations came from all over the world. The Japanese. I think some of this can be found on YouTube. If not, I'll be putting it on soon. Japanese television, German television, Dutch television. Now, a story about the Dutch. They came over to interview me from Holland and sat me down in my own living room, and I made them very welcome. Lovely man who was going to interview me. Very nice guy. And then the red light on the camera went on. "So, Malcolm, UFOs in Bonnie Bridge, what a load of rubbish, yes?" And I went, now he was waiting on a reaction there, David. He was waiting for me to lose it. No, not at all. I mean, everybody's got their opinion, so I calmly told him, everybody's got their opinion. And then I launched into what was going on with the sightings in Bonnie Bridge. And Councillor Billy Buchanan is going to be speaking about the sightings in Bonnie Bridge this year in Glasgow University at the Scottish UFO Conference. Tickets are available just now. So if anybody wants to come to this conference with Alison Dunlop, Ron Halliday and others, do please come along to this, because you'll get your eyes open for sure,
Yeah, I think they're only £10, aren't they, as I understand it?
Correct, yeah, that's £10 for the day. I mean, a full day's entertainment. You don't get that anywhere else, really.
No, that's right.
But I mean, going back to Bonnybridge, I just feel that it's one of these what we call window areas, and that's an area or location which seems to attract a higher concentration of UFO reports than anywhere else. Now, of course, why that should be is open to question. We could speculate till the cows come home why Bonnybridge is a window area. I mean, we don't have any facts to suggest why this is.
No. So I'm just having a look in your UFO Case Files of Scotland, Volume 2, the sightings.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
There's it talks a lot about your early days in ufology and everything. So your earliest sighting? When you was in the late teens, were you?
I've had a number of sightings. I'll just give you them as I recall them. Funnily enough, this was at Loch Ness, and we were doing some interviews with local people who had claimed to have seen Nessie. Later that same night, we had a campfire on the shores of Loch Ness at Drumnadrochit, and there were Canadians and Germans and American people.
Drumnadrochit, yep, I know that. I've been there.
Have you? Oh,
yeah, I've been there. Yeah, very expensive water.
Yeah. It's a lovely hotel, the Drumnadrochit Hotel, massive big hotel. That's where they have the official Loch Ness museum type of thing there as well. But as we were on this, having this campfire with these tourists, it was a lovely, beautiful night, a starry night, hardly any clouds in the sky. And suddenly this lady screamed out, "What's that over there?" And we looked towards the hills on the other side of the loch. We could see the silhouette of the hills. And we saw this ball of light just jumping up and down the hills. And then it would stop, jump up and down and stop. And it just careered off into the sky and was gone in seconds. And, we did all the necessary checks again with the airports, etc. And we couldn't explain that. And just while I'm thinking about that, you've made me think of another one. I gave a talk to Probe. It's a group in England and in Lytham St Anne's, and just near Blackpool there. And later, after I gave my talk, myself and some chaps went out to Blackpool Beach, or the Sands at I think it was the north side of Blackpool. And we looked out towards the sea, and suddenly this ball of light. It wasn't a fuzzy ball, it was a clear ball of light. And here were three so-called professional ufologists staring up at this ball of light coming over in the sky towards us. And nobody spoke, because we both knew, wait a minute, this doesn't look like a helicopter or a satellite, because it was so low down. And this is before all your drones and everything. It wasn't a drone. There was no red lights, green lights, navigation lights, anything. Now, admittedly, Blackpool Airport was just behind us. So, is it an aircraft? What was this? And it just silently moved across our heads. And we just shook our heads and went, my God, I really think that's a UFO. And so that was another one that we saw. That was a very bizarre one as well, yeah.
Interesting. I was looking. There's a Joyce Burns, a very perceptive lady. Her UFO sightings between 1970 and 1980. Do you remember any of that off the top of your head? Or
Yeah, Joyce Byers. Yeah, I do. Of course, I do. She was what we call a repeater witness. That's someone who sees UFOs on a regular basis. And myself and my colleague travelled down to a wee place called Moffat in Dumfries in Galloway to interview this lady. And she was seeing these balls of light. She was seeing orbs. She was seeing rods in the sky above people's rooftops in the vicinity, And she kept a diary of these sightings. I think in that book I put quite a number of them in this book. Yeah. And she was seeing this on a regular basis. And for all her wonderful stories, for all she told, she never ever got any photographic evidence of what she was seeing. And the only thing that truly backed her up, I guess, was that other people in Dumfries and Galloway and Moffat, Lockerbie, etc., had seen strange things in that sky at that time. So she didn't stand alone. If she was making it up, then she was making it up. But there were other people who seen things at that time as well, And
she was actually psychic, was she? It says about her psychic audio tape spirit messages.
Yes, I forgot about that. Yes, she claimed, and with her friend, she had a friend as well, forget her name, but they claimed that they were in touch with George Adamski. Psychic communication. Now, I'm laughing, but I don't mean that in a bad way. It's, because, like I said before, never poo-poo anything. And so I believe I put some communication from psychic communication, that is, that the ladies got from George Adamski in this book. Now, the lady also claimed to be in spirit communication by, the names went out of my head. Marty, somebody is a country and western singer. Marty Robbins.
Yep.
And she had a guitar in the room. And I went, because I'm a guitarist myself, and I went to grab it one night. She said, no, don't touch it. Why? That's Marty. That's Marty's guitar. Only Marty's allowed to play that. So when she went in the kitchen to make a cup of tea, I gingerly walked over and strummed the guitar, and it was well out of tune. Now, any professional guitarist would not play a guitar out of tune, if indeed it was Marty Robbins. Yeah. But that was just one of the tales that she told, and she deserved a part in that book simply because it was a very, very interesting woman, for sure.
Yeah, I'm just looking at this. George Adamski communicates. So what's your opinions of George Adamski while we're on the subject? Do you think he was for real, for genuine? I mean, my own opinion was that he was. I believe a lot of I think he might have been one of these people that might have exaggerated his stories a little bit, but I do believe something happened. What's your opinion, Malcolm?
George Adamski, I very, very rarely, if never, get asked about George Adamski. It's great that you're asking me. I dare say, I've read all his books, Inside the Spaceships, and all the other books that he wrote at the time with Desmond Leslie, etc. And I think clearly he did see something. Now, royalty, as you know, royalty invited him to speak to them about the UFOs, etc. Yeah. But he may have embellished some of the things, admittedly, to make it sound even better. I think he said there were bases on the moon, or people living on the dark side of the moon, and there were fields and everything. He spoke about fireflies in the sky. That's before we went through the Van Allen radiation belt, which to some degree looked like fireflies. So there were certain bits and bobs of his tale that did ring true, or it would appear to ring true. So like him, like many other contactees of that ilk back in the day, some you may take with a pinch of salt, but I think George Adamski, he may have had something, yeah.
Well, I thought that might be interesting, especially for our American listeners, because I know there's quite a few apparently. There's also the Betty and Barney Hill case. What do you make of that one?
Well, at that time, of course, back in America in the 60s, it was very rare that you saw a white woman with a black man. And so even that was poo-pooed and frowned upon, so that didn't do them any favours. But as far as their actual case goes themselves, I genuinely believe Betty and Barney Hill saw something. The only downside for me as an individual is in her latter years before she passed away, and this is only what I've heard, is that she was taking UFO investigators out into the roads and fields and says, look, there's a UFO. And it wasn't. It was just an aircraft. Right. Now, does that mean that what happened with Barney didn't happen? Or is she looking for everything light in the sky as a UFO? I don't know. But the bottom line is that was a massive case. And was it Leo Springfield was the researcher or the hypnotherapist? So a lot of that came out through hypnosis as well, of course, the star map, etc.
That's right. Yeah, I was going to mention the star map. I mean, that was quite fascinating in itself, wasn't it? Wasn't there some stars on it that have only been discovered over the last 50 years, or 30 odd years or something since the case? There was
another researcher who allegedly managed to find the star system similar to what was in that book, and I forget the lady's name, but whether that is the same star system is not, because if you angle all the stars in the sky, you will eventually get a star system which resonates and looks like what's in there. So you have to be careful with that, But And then, of course, there's so many cases in America, which, Roswell, you've got Socorro with Lonnie Zamora, the police officer, and you've got the farmhouse, Sutton farmhouse, with the entities on the roof, which is another one. But I just love hearing. These are stories that I grew up with, and again, flamed the fire of my passion for these to find out more. And, of course, Britain, thankfully, has its own wonderful UFO stories as well. So we have to be thankful for that.
Yeah. I try to avoid the Rendlesham a little bit because I think that does get a little bit done to death especially over the last couple of years anyway. But what about the Dunoon UFO caught on camera? I think on video, the 14th of June, 95. Do you remember anything about that?
Yeah, vaguely. There was a chap who got this video footage of a UFO in Dunoon, and it did not conform to the normal definition of an aircraft or a helicopter. And he sent that footage up to me, which I had a look at, and it was unusual. And it's like anything else in life, David. As a researcher, I get sent video footage, I get sent photographs, etc. And everybody's looking for an answer. And sometimes, we can give them an answer. For instance, when I lived in Ealing in W5 a number of years ago, myself and my colleague at the time, my partner at the time, was taken to this chap's house. He had video footage to show us of UFOs in the sky. Okay, let's have a look at it. So we went into his house. He put the VHS tape at that time before DVDs, CDs. He put it in his machine, put it on, and I looked at my partner, she looked at me, and we both knew straight away this was not a UFO. All it was searchlights illuminating low-lying clouds. Now, the way the disposition of the air and everything that night, you didn't actually see the searchlights coming up from the ground. You only saw them illuminating the bottom of the clouds. Only at the very end did you see these columns of light coming up, illuminating so we said to the chap, sorry, to us that looks like, searchlights. No, it's not. You're meant to be professional people. You're meant to believe in this stuff. Oh, I don't know about believing it, sir, but I can tell you that's searchlights. So some people have this desire and the want and the need for things to be real, that their mind just jumps into overdrive, and you can't tell them.
I think probably some might like to get into your book as well, maybe if you write a book at the time. I was just going. There's something else that really interests me a lot is the out-of-body experiences. I know there's a thing that it says here is an out-of-body experience of a different kind. Now that's in your UFO Files of Scotland, Volume 2. And it deals with UFO abductions. What do you think about? What's your opinions on all that?
Well, I mean, out-of-body experiences, before we look at abductions, are clearly true. And again, I retort back to earlier that not all cases are oxygen starvation to the brain.
No.
You mentioned yourself that people have came out of their body and saw shoes on the roof, or they could tell you certain things. They can visit a family friend and says, you were reading a book. What's the name of the book? Well, the book was called it. Yeah, that's right. How did you know that? So that is a facet out-of-body experiences. Now, the abduction phenomena, which is a massive thing for me in my life right now, and is obviously a worldwide enigma. It's been going on since time immemorial. The question arises, why? Why that three-letter word? Why? That's a big thing that we need to ask. We could speculate and say that it's, I know it sounds Hollywood, that they're taking sperm and ova from males and females and repopulating a dying planet.
You hear that story such a lot, don't you? From different people.
Absolutely.
I can't imagine everyone's making that up,
No, and I spoke to a female some years ago who was an abductee, and she said that she was on board one of these objects, and then suddenly she was presented with this half-human, half-alien hybrid child that was holding, this small grey was holding it in its arms, and she heard telepathically, not vocally, that this is partly belongs to you. And so my thing, though, David, is abductions have been going on for countless centuries. Surely they've got enough genetic material by now to repopulate that dying planet. Other speculations say that maybe it's kind of soul energy. They're just trying to understand their soul and the makeup of this afterlife, because they don't have that. I don't know. People say that, well, God created man. So how many gods do we have? Did he also create these small grey beings? And if so, does their God look like them?
Sure.
So you can expand this discussion, and it drives you nuts.
I know, it often drives me nuts, I must say.
But the thing is, with the A70 case, which is Scotland's biggest abduction case, these guys were terrified. These guys had scars on their body that previously were not there. And, I mean, that's one of these major cases, yeah.
Yeah, well, especially when it comes down to implants as well. You hear about people saying they've got implants, and some of these things have been dug out, and they're strange little, I don't know what to call them, really. They're just like strange pieces of metal, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, I remember, again, when I was living in Ealing, we put on some conferences down there, and Daryl Sims, the alien hunter is his name, he had a wee box, it was a big box actually, on our kitchen table, but it was all like segmented into smaller boxes. And in those smaller boxes, and on a piece of cotton wool, was a little implant. And he said, "Oh, that came from Wisconsin. That one came from Philadelphia." And he was jumping about, so excited, And I always remember him. He was a lovely guy, and he truly believes that these aliens, call them what you will, presenting these implants into people to monitor them, i.e. maybe their health condition, maybe where they are, this, that, and the other, or to take some information from us. Again, it's a tough one. But having said that, we've got the proof,
Yeah. Well, there would have to be chosen people, and why they would choose specific people, I don't know. It's just. Or do they? Or are there more than we actually think? And there's people that are getting implants and they don't even know about it. Maybe until later. I think Brenda says she's got an implant in her shoulder. Brenda Butler, I'm talking about now.
Yeah. I don't know, but clearly there's a program of sorts going on. And to answer that other part of your question, maybe people who are being abducted just now, their family tree have been abducted through the centuries, so to speak. So it's like it's a family thing. And people have speculated that that's partly what it is,
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's something that has to be looked at. It's still ongoing, like I said, and I just don't understand why they are still ongoing with these abduction cases.
Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you what, the media really give this a knocking, don't they? Anything to do with the paranormal, the UFOs, they still do it. Just take the mickey out of it. And you must find it a lot when you go on TV and radio shows, that they just take the mickey out of you.
Not so much
you, but the subject itself.
Yeah, the subject itself. One of the witnesses in the A70 case, Gary Wood. Gary and I were doing a programme for BBC Scotland called The Mysterious North, and it was filmed in a castle near Aberdeen. And they were doing a lot of interviews with different people because it was going to be a series of shows. So they tried to get as many people in. And I was mic'd up with headphones on. Gary was mic'd up with headphones on. And they were taking the mickey out of this woman who was on before us about, she was some psychic woman. And I said to Gary, right, we're moving. We're leaving. We're not going on, Gary. Yeah, you're right, Malcolm. I don't want to go enough. They're taking the mickey. And then suddenly I saw this producer guy in the wings he's frantically waving his arms. And he's looking at her and he's going, no. I forgot that he could hear me saying we're leaving, So he came over to us and he says, I heard what you said, Malcolm. Please, don't leave the studio. Don't leave the studio. It was makeup studio in this castle. And he says, I promise I'll get the compere guy to really not take the mickey. So he cut a long story short. He spoke to the guy in between takes and he says, these guys don't want the mickey taken out of them. And true to his word, the presenter took it very seriously. He did his job professionally and honestly. But if you had done that with me, it might have been a different television show you would have got.
I can see that. But it does sort of, it does annoy me actually because I know John Hanson was on the one show earlier. Sorry, it was last year, wasn't it? And straight after it, they had Keith Lemon on there really taking the mickey out of it. I mean, John and I had been, well, not so much me, but I was up in Rendlesham Woods with him filming all day long in the cold. I come back with a stinking cold and went straight to bed afterwards.
Yeah.
All day filming, and we had a short 5-minute film which was done quite well, I think.
Yeah.
But they still couldn't resist of having that little bit of a pee take afterwards, you know. It's and it was I think John was quite upset about it. I think he thought it was going to be a longer film after all the filming he'd been doing, you know. But
yeah, I mean, I always say to any TV people or newspaper people who get in touch with me, I say, look, you're going to take this seriously, because I ain't going to come on the show, or I'm not going to present you with a shirt off my back and all the witness people unless you treat it seriously. And 9 times out of 10 they say, look, Malcolm, no, we will treat this seriously, we won't take the mickey out of you. And only once is that as they went back on their word. We were dealing, funnily enough, in the Kilsyth case, and it was a Sun reporter, the Scottish Sun, came on the investigation with us, and the story the following day was taking Malcolm Inspector as in Spectre, Inspector Malcolm Robinson, and it taken the right mickey out of us. So I went back to the guy who the reporter. I says, look, you told me you wouldn't do this. He says, Malcolm, I put an honest story to my editor, and the editor says that's too serious. We need to put salt and pepper and give it arms and legs. He says, when I gave him it was fine. They've stretched the story. And that's the sad thing, that whilst we need British public to come forward with their stories, sometimes we have to approach the British media to get there, to get the stories, but we're not always guaranteed a fair trial, you know.
And of course, it's not just the British media; it's the American media as well. They don't treat it seriously either, do they? And with all the serious, we've heard some quite serious stories tonight from yourself, and to me, they're not something to be taken a mickey out of. You know, they're actually serious. They affect people's lives in a very serious way. You know, and I'm sure you feel the same way about that. And I think it's very annoying when people are just sort of they put their life on the line, really, because open to ridicule by their friends and everybody else, and they're just laid out flat and just taking the mickey out of. It's really annoying.
Yeah, I mean, it's very true. And always remember, David, for every one person that sees a UFO, there might have been 3 people behind them who also saw that UFO, but won't come forward for fear of ridicule. Only the one will come forward.
Yeah, that's right. I think you're exactly right there. I think that's why a lot of people don't come forward. I mean, I know there's lots of pilots that see UFOs and they don't come forward.
I think probably, I mean, I've done a lot of TV shows, but one of the best ones that I really enjoyed, and it was a slap in the face to all these people, was a programme called We the Jury back in 1997. And it was filmed in a courtroom. So you had the brass railings, the wooden benches and all the rest of it. You had the jury. It was live on the BBC Scotland. It was live on radio, etc. The radio stations were there. And I was opposed, sitting in the dock where I was saying the case for UFOs, that UFOs are real. And in the Skeptics Corner was a chap called Stuart Campbell from Edinburgh, who was giving the skeptic side of that UFOs are a load of nonsense. In the jury side, we had my side was made up of a lot of ufologists, abductees. Gary and Colin from the A70 case were there. The boys from CE4 rock group, Brian McMullen, was there. And in the other side, the skeptic side, was professors, astronomers, all these high-tech guys, you know, with all the fanciful stories and that. So I stood up. I had 2.5 minutes to say my piece. Then Stuart stood up. He had 2.5 minutes to say his piece. Then it went out into the jury, and it got really, really heated, David. It really did.
Sure it did.
At the end of the show, the woman on the television says, "Okay, jury, you've now listened to both sides of the story. It's now time to decide if aliens are real or aliens are not real." And so they cut to the commercial, they came back, and then, foreman of the jury, would you kindly please stand? Yeah. Have you reached a verdict? Is aliens true or not? We, the jury, find that aliens are real by 9 votes to 3. And at that, all lads went up in the arms. Yay! It was just so good. And the look on the astronomers' faces and the scientists' faces are just shaking their heads. It was wonderful. What a wonderful night that was.
Yeah, to be honest, mate, anyone who thinks that aliens are not real, to be honest, the amount of planets and stars systems out there, it's ridiculous to think that we're the only ones, isn't it? It's just ridiculous. And obviously there's going to be civilizations out there that are millions of years in advance of us, possibly, and there's no reason why they can't be visiting us at all. They've had vast, superior knowledge that we have not even thought of yet.
Absolutely. They might view us as just insignificant. Like if you turned a stone in the garden, you look at wee ants, the little ants would look up, oh, it's got bright, there's something happening, but they don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
But what we have to bear in mind is that UFOs, as you probably know yourself, I'm sure, are not just sighted in the skies of this world. They are sighted in the oceans of this world.
Yes.
And many wonderful USO sightings have been seen entering and exiting the oceans of this planet, more so around the island of Puerto Rico. That's fascinating. As far as where do they come from, they may not necessarily be extraterrestrial. It could be a dimensional thing.
Yes, I agree with that too.
Yeah. The French ufologist Jacques Vallée, in his Dimension book and subsequent books, believed that the super string theory, there are so many different dimensions. It's like if you got a bicycle wheel and it's static, you can see the spokes, and you spin it, it's moving at a different rate. And then, so I think possibly it's a combination of the three. Maybe some are extraterrestrial, maybe some are coming from under the oceans, and maybe some are dimensional. So I've not, in my heart of hearts, decided where the true answer lies, for want of a better word. I just don't know. I don't know where the answer lies.
This is why the likes of yourself and many other researchers are still searching for the answers, and may that continue. Well, Malcolm, I'm afraid we've come to the end of our show. It's been a fascinating show, and thank you very much for coming on. It's been brilliant. Maybe we can get you back on again one day, and we can go through it all again. Yeah,
I'm more than happy, David. I'm more than happy to come on again.
But as I say, for people out there, I will be putting Malcolm's books on the site, on the Paranormal Dimensions site, and so if you want to look further into Malcolm's books, then you'll be fascinated as I am, because they're brilliant. Anyway, thanks again, Malcolm, and bye-bye to you. Thanks for coming.
All the best. Thank you.
Cheers, Malcolm. Bye-bye. Well, there you are. Another brilliant guest, and hopefully we'll have another brilliant guest for you shortly. So I will wind up now, and thank you for visiting the Paranormal Dimensions, and don't forget, sleep with one eye open. Paranormal Dimensions is a